So the most extraordinary thing is the reappointment of Sébastien Lecornu by Monsieur Macron. Reappointing a prime minister who resigned 4 days earlier is not renewal, it's crisis management by boomerang. And Emmanuel Macron has brought back Sébastien Lecornu to hold the centre just long enough to pass a budget and to stop the markets and the Assembly from finishing what politics began. The move is audacious, brittle, and entirely shaped by the maths. On October the 6th, Lecornu quit after his first government collapsed before it could even meet. And on Friday the 10th of October, today, or rather yesterday, after a day of meetings with parties at the Élysée, Macron reappointed him and handed him the same poison chalice, form a cabinet and get a 2026 budget through a hung assembly. Opposition leaders on the left and the right immediately denounced the manoeuvre and trailed a no-confidence motion. Lecornu's first and fiercest adversary is the calendar. To respect France's 70-day budget process and the Constitutional Council's timings, the draft must land in Parliament on Monday the 13th of October. He also needs finance, budget and social security portfolios filled immediately to do the line-by-line work. Delay is not just embarrassing, it's operationally fatal. And France enters this fight with debt around 114% of GDP and a deficit projected at roughly 5.4% this year. The Banque de France warns that the political mess has already clipped growth by about 0.2% points and urges bringing the 2026 deficit under the 4.8%. And that is the yardstick by which any compromise will be judged on the floor of the Assembly and in the bond market. Macron has no majority. The centre cannot govern alone. The Republicans are split. The left is divided between those who might tolerate a budget with social concessions and those who prefer to force a reckoning. The National Rally will try to fell the government at the first opportunity, and this turns every clause into a bargaining chip and every vote into a confidence test. Two concessions already floated. First, soften the phasing of the 2023 pension reform, slowing the rise from 62 to 64 to tempt parts of the centre-left. Second, close tax optimisation at the top rather than touch a headline wealth tax. Both help assemble votes. Neither closes the fiscal gap alone, and each alienates a different flank Lecornu also needs. This is coalition politics conducted without a coalition. And Lecornu's line, he presents himself as a soldier monk, asking ministers to park 2027 ambitions, promising a budget first and party theatre never. He also signals that no one will be allowed to shirk the repair of public finances. The posture is Spartan, the incentives in the Assembly are not. RN and parts of the left are back, censure motion and centrists are fractured. Government falls again, markets wobble, and France drifts toward technocracy or dissolution. That's the biggest risk if there is an immediate topple of the government. If there's a narrow survival, a patched-together vote of confidence, a first reading budget and months of rolling instability that taxes capacity and public patience will continue. And if, on the other hand, there's a structured compromise, a time-limited pact on budget lines, pension timing and revenue measures that meets or nearly meets the Banque de France's deficit guidance and steadies growth expectations, it is the least dramatic path and therefore the one most likely to be dismissed until every other door slams. Now, I know I said on the one hand and on the other hand, I think, and there are three options: the immediate toppling of the government, the narrow survival, and the structured compromise. But of course, if you've lived any time in Russia, which I have, the idiom of on the one hand, on the other hand, is not restricted to just two hands. For some bizarre reason, a Russian idiom admits the possibility of three or more. So France's policy credibility is now priced daily. Each hint of convergence lifted the OATs earlier this week. Each hint of rupture widens spreads and forces deeper cuts later. And it couldn't have been plainer. Uncertainty is the enemy of growth. And that line should be printed on the front page of the budget. Macron became president as a breaker of moulds, and today he governs as an arranger of fragments. Reappointing Lecornu is less about loyalty than about the absence of better options that can win 289 votes. It also reflects his personal standing, now scraping record lows, which robs him of any political oxygen that might be required for bigger moves. Success is not heroics, it's mundanity. A tabled budget on the 13th of October, a cabinet that survives the first confidence vote, and a deficit path credible enough for investors and tolerable enough for the Assembly. If he clears those 3 bars, France gets time to breathe. If he hits any one of them, we're back to crisis mechanics. This is a stress test of France's capacity to compromise without the habits of coalition. If Lecornu can turn a week of farce into a quarter of grind, budget lines agreed, pension timing tweaked, fiscal targets kept within sight, he will not be celebrated. He will have done the most valuable thing in public life. He will have made boredom possible again. In a crisis, boring is brave.